Under IFRS, when the net realizable value of inventory increases after a previous write-down, the reversal is limited to what amount? The amount of the original write-down. B, there is no limit to the amount of the reversal. Or C, the difference between the current market value and the previous carrying amount. So this is going to be the original write-down. So for example, if we had 500 value of inventory, let's say, and this fell to 450, and then let's say later on we revalued this and it turns out it's actually worth 600. We cannot write this up all the way to 600. We can only write it up to 500. And so for that reason, we will go with answer A. Bright Star Corporation, a retail company, acquires inventory throughout the year to sell. At the beginning of 2023, let's say, BSC had no inventory in stock. During 2023, BSC made the following inventory purchases. So we have first quarter, we bought 3,000 units at 25 per unit, and so on and so forth through the fourth quarter. Throughout the year, BSC sold 10,000 units at $40 each, receiving payment in cash. BSC determined that 3,000 units of inventory were left over, with 2,000 specifically being identified as being bought in the fourth quarter, so 2,000 from here, and 1,000 acquired in the third quarter, so from here. So we sold all the units from the first and second quarter, it sounds like. The gross profit for BSC in 2023, assuming no product returns, is closest to. So we're going to need to calculate our revenue and cost of goods sold. Revenue will be straightforward. It's just going to be this 10,000 multiplied by 40 gives us 400,000 revenue. Cost of goods sold then, when you add all of these up, you get 13,000 units. So what that means is we sold 3,000 here, 2,500 here. So that brings us to 5,500. We had 1,000 left over in the third quarter, so we sold 2,500 here. That brings us to our 8,000. And then we had 2,000 left over here, and that's the remaining 2,000 that we sold. So we're going to then do the weighted average of each of these sales. So we're going to do 3,000 times 25. Sorry, we're not doing a weighted average here. We're adding up all of the cost of goods sold here. So we sold 3,000 and the cost was 25. So that's going to be seen here. And then we're going to go on down the line. So we get total cost of goods sold at 284,000, meaning our gross profit, difference between revenue and COGS, gives us 116,000. Answer A. Angela and James are close friends. They wish to start a cosmetics business, which they expect to grow fast. Hence, they need external financing. Their main concern is copyright infringement-related lawsuits, since they will enter a competitive market. As such, they plan to file articles of incorporation with a regulatory authority. Which of the following best describes Angela and James' business structure? Are they going to have a corporation, a general partnership, or a sole proprietorship? Well, they can't have a sole proprietorship since there's going to be two of them. A sole proprietorship would be one person, and you're not really going to be able to raise capital as a sole proprietorship. So that's going to take that off the table. General partnership, we would be able to raise capital from limited partners or passive investors. But the problem here is they're worried about copyright infringement and lawsuits. General partnerships do not provide the liability protection that a corporation does. So that's going to lead us to A, corporation as our best answer, given the need for external financing, they think they're going to grow fast, and the lawsuit or liability issues. Answer A. Which of the following most likely distinguishes a general partner from a limited partner in a limited partnership? Is it A, both general partners and limited partners have limited liability? That is going to be incorrect. Limited partners do have limited liability, but general partners do not. They technically have unlimited liability. So any debt that's taken on for this business venture or whatnot, the general partners are responsible. B, the growth of the business is limited to the competence and integrity of its limited partners. That's also going to be incorrect. This would be a correct statement if it said general partners. The general partners are going to be the ones running the business, and so their competence and integrity is going to be much more important than the LPs, who are just going to be the passive investors. So this should be C. A general partner has unlimited liability, correct, and manages the business, correct, while limited partners have limited liability but can provide capital or expertise. That's also correct. Answer C. Standard deviation of a portfolio is 15%. If the portfolio's return is 22% and the risk-free return is 6%, then the Sharpe ratio is closest to. Our Sharpe ratio is going to be the return of the portfolio minus risk-free rate divided by standard deviation. We're given all of these figures. We have standard deviation at 15. That'll be in our denominator. Numerator will be this 22 minus 6. And we can see all that plugged in right here. Gives us a Sharpe ratio of 1.0667. And when we round that, we'll be closest to answer B. A trader enters into a 1-year forward contract to purchase ABC Company shares at a forward price of INR 528.01. The current spot price of the shares is INR 502.87. Assuming that the spot price increases simultaneously to 504.66 per share at contract inception, and assuming a risk-free rate of 5%, the forward contract mark-to-market from the trader's perspective is most likely. So this is going to be pretty straightforward calculation. There's a lot of extra data in here to kind of throw you off, but in reality, this is just going to be current price minus spot, gives us the value of the contract. So the current price, 504.66, and the spot price that we bought at, 502.87, is going to give us that value of 1.79. There's not really anything to discount because it says that it jumped right at inception, so there's not really anything to discount back to. And we're long this contract, so we benefit from the increase. So for that reason, we have positive 1.79, answer C. Which of the following is least likely a corporate takeover mechanism? So least likely, meaning 2 of these will be takeover mechanisms and 1 will not. So we've got A, poison pill, B, tender offer, or C, proxy contest. So C and B are going to be takeover mechanisms. These tend to be the more friendly ones. Proxy contest is when the acquirer is trying to get enough votes from shareholders to take over the company via proxy. Tender offer is when they're making an offer directly to the company to buy their shares. And that's going to leave us with A, poison pill. This is not a takeover strategy. This is going to be a defense mechanism by shareholders of a company that is trying to be taken over. So these are strategies used by the acquirer, and this is a strategy used by the target to avoid takeover. Answer A. While evaluating a firm's ownership structure, which of the following issues regarding equity is most likely considered negative? Is it A, shareholders have the power to nominate board members? This doesn't sound like a negative, that sounds like a positive. If shareholders can nominate board members, they can advocate for running the company in a certain way, whether that's better or in a way that benefits shareholders. B, in a recently privatized firm, all voting rights are held by previous owners. This sounds like it could be a negative if contrasted with A, if we're not able to get new board members on or advocate for other things as shareholders, then the previous owners are going to be completely in control, which could potentially be a negative. So I would lean towards answer B as our answer so far. And C, the safeguard of inferior voting rights of shareholders are in bylaws and articles of association. Safeguarding voting rights, this is going to be a positive, so I would lean towards B being our best answer here, being the most negative thing. Answer B. An analyst is given the task to evaluate the liquidity position of 3 firms that operate in the chemical sector: Jupiter Co., Saturn Corp., and Pluto Incorporated. The balance sheet accounts of the 3 firms are given in the following table. So we have that balance sheet information for those 3 companies. Based on the provided balance sheets of all 3 firms, the most likely liquid company is. So liquid meaning they have the most cash available to meet near-term needs. So I think the quick ratio is going to provide us the best snapshot into which one is the most liquid. So we're going to be calculating this ratio for each of these different companies. And the reason we have to do this is they have these at different scales. So you see Saturn Corp has $8 million in cash, but they also have a lot more in short-term debt. So just looking at the cash itself is not going to provide us the answer. We use these ratios so that the numbers are comparable based on the scale of the business. So for our quick ratio, we'll do cash plus equivalents, and then we'll also add in accounts receivable, and then we're going to divide by current liabilities. So cash plus equivalents plus accounts receivable for each of these, it's going to be these first two line items. So that's going to be in our numerator for each of these three company calculations. And then current liabilities, we're going to be adding in accounts payable plus short-term debt. So that'll be these two rows here. That's going to show up in our denominator for each of these. Gives us 1.0263. And again, the higher the better is going to be better for this, because this essentially means we have more cash plus accounts receivable to cover our upcoming debts and liabilities. So 1.0263, 0.6512, and 0.5294. So Jupiter will be the highest. Answer B. Which of the following screening approaches seeks to identify companies that record the highest ESG score in their industry? Is it A, negative screening? This is not negative screening. Negative screening would be looking at the lowest ESG scores and then likely ruling those out of your investment process. But here we're looking for high ESG scores. B, positive / best-in-class screening. That sounds like it'll be our answer. Positive would indicate that we're looking for companies that have positive or good environmental, social, and government impact and would have a high score. And C, ESG integration. This is going to be less related to highest score and more so just that they have some type of strategy integrated with the company related to environmental, social, and governance. Not necessarily that they're going to be the cream of the crop or anything like that. Answer B.